I sold the house. I vanished without telling a soul. I changed cities. I changed my life. I changed everything. And now, as I look out the window of this small apartment that is all mine, where no one yells at me, where no one uses me, where no one plans to steal the only thing I had left, I am going to tell you why I did it. Why did a 68-year-old mother have to flee from her own son as if she were escaping a predator? Because that is what Jason became to me. A predator. And his wife, Jessica, along with that entire family of vipers she brought into my life, were the perfect accomplices to my destruction. But I didn't let myself be destroyed. I made a decision that many would call cruel, others would call extreme, but for me, it was the only way to survive. And if you stick with me until the end of this story, you are going to understand why I don't regret a single thing. Why was every document I signed, every box I packed, every tear I shed in silence while planning my escape worth it? Because there are moments in life when you have to choose between remaining the victim or becoming your own savior. And I chose to save myself. I know what it feels like to be alone at this stage of life. I know what it is to wake up every morning wondering if anyone actually cares about you or if you are just a resource they can exploit until you are of no use. For years, I swallowed that reality. I convinced myself it was normal, that this is just how modern American families are, that I was being dramatic. But there was something inside me, a small voice that was getting louder and louder, telling me no, that this wasn't right, that nobody deserves to be treated the way I was being treated. And that voice was right. But it reached a point where that voice wasn't whispering anymore. It was screaming. And I finally listened. What I am about to tell you isn't just my story. It is the story of thousands of seniors who are invisible to their own families, who are treated like burdens, like ATM machines, like obstacles to the inheritance their children already consider their own. And if you, listening to me, identify with anything I am about to say, I want you to know that you are not alone, that there is a way out, that it is never too late to reclaim your dignity. It all started 3 months ago. It was a Tuesday afternoon, one of those gray days in the Midwest where time seems to move slower. Jason and Jessica had been especially distant for the last few weeks. Whispered calls, doors closing when I walked into a room, complicit glances that didn't include explanations. I tried not to think too much about it. After all, they had been married for 5 years, and I had learned to give them their space. Jessica never liked me. I knew that from the first day I met her. The way she looked at me, as if I were something old that needed to be replaced, something obsolete taking up too much square footage. But Jason seemed happy with her, and that was the only thing that mattered to me then. How foolish I was, how blind, how naive to believe that a mother's love was enough to keep a son close when there was a woman poisoning his ear every single day. That Tuesday, Jason walked into the kitchen where I was making dinner. He had that expression I had learned to recognize, that mix of anticipated guilt and discomfort. He was coming to ask me for something. That expression always came before the requests. Mom, I need to borrow some cash. Mom, we're going to stay here a few months longer until we find a place. Mom, Jessica is a little stressed. Try not to bother her. Mom, Mom, Mom. Always Mom when he needed something, but never Mom when it came to including me in his plans, his joys, his real life. I turned toward him with a smile that was already automatic. That motherly smile that endures everything, forgives everything, never says no. Jason, honey, what's wrong? And he, without looking me directly in the eye, dropped the bomb on me like someone commenting on the weather. Mom, I need the credit cards. All 3 of them. Jessica and I have to make some important purchases this week. I'll give them back to you next Monday. Something inside me tensed up. He had never asked for all 3 cards at the same time. 1, sure. Maybe 2 in case of an emergency. But all 3? What do you need all 3 for, Jason? He shrugged with that indifference that broke my heart. I told you. Important purchases. Don't worry, Mom. Trust me. Trust me. Those words echoed in my head for days afterward. Trust me, said the son I had raised alone after his father died when he was just 8 years old. Trust me, said the man for whom I paid full college tuition by working double shifts. Trust me, said the one living in my house rent-free while saving for his future. a future that apparently didn't include me. But I wanted to believe. I needed to believe. So I took the 3 cards out of my wallet and handed them to him. Jason took them without even saying thank you. He just nodded, mumbled a quick "catch you later," and walked out of the kitchen. I heard him say something to Jessica in a low voice in the hallway. I heard her laugh, a laugh that sounded like victory, and something inside me knew, in that moment I knew, that I had just made a terrible mistake. But I still didn't know how terrible it was. I still didn't know those cards were going to be used to fund a betrayal so big it would change my life forever. The next 3 days were strange. Jason and Jessica practically disappeared from the house. They left early and came back late. When I asked where they had been, the answers were vague. Running errands. Taking care of stuff. Don't worry, Mom. I tried to check the card activity online, but every time I did, the system said there was an error. To try again later. I called the bank, and they told me everything was in order, that there was no problem with my account. But something didn't feel right. Something was happening, and I wasn't seeing it. On Friday night, Jason came into my room. "Mom, Jessica and I are going out of town for the weekend. We might stay until Wednesday. Some friends invited us to their cabin. I need a break from work." It seemed odd to me. Jason never took spontaneous vacations. But I nodded. "It's okay, son. Have fun." He left without saying anything else. No hug. No kiss on the forehead like when he was a boy. He just left. And I stayed sitting on my bed, staring at the walls of that room where I had cried so many nights after becoming a widow, wondering when exactly I had lost my son. At what moment had the sweet boy who hugged me and told me I was his favorite person in the world turned into this cold stranger who barely looked at me? On Saturday morning, I woke up to a strange silence in the house. That kind of silence that makes you feel uncomfortable in your own home. Jason and Jessica were already gone. They didn't leave a note. They didn't say exactly what time they would be back. Nothing. Just that heavy emptiness filling every corner. I made myself some coffee and sat in the living room, trying to shake off that feeling of uneasiness that wouldn't let me breathe right. I turned on the TV to distract myself, but I couldn't focus on anything. My eyes kept going to the door of Jason and Jessica's room, toward that space that used to be my sewing room, which I had given up when they got married and needed privacy. Privacy to conspire against me, as it turned out. But I didn't know that yet. I was still in that bubble of denial where mothers live when we don't want to accept that our children are capable of hurting us. I spent the day cleaning the house. I always clean when I'm nervous. It's my way of keeping my hands busy while my mind spins and spins. I cleaned the kitchen, the bathroom, the living room, and when I finished with the common areas, I stood in front of the door to Jason and Jessica's room. Normally, I respected their space. I never entered without permission. But that day, something pushed me to turn the doorknob. "I'm just going to air it out a bit," I told myself. "I'm just going to open the window. Nothing else." I walked in, and the smell of Jessica's expensive perfume hit me immediately. That perfume that always seemed too intense, too pretentious. I opened the window, and a fresh breeze came in. I turned to leave when something on the desk caught my attention. Jason's old cell phone. The one he had replaced 2 months ago with a new model. It was there, plugged into the charger. The screen lit up. Apparently, he still used it for something. My hand moved before my brain could stop it. I picked up the phone. It didn't have a passcode. Jason was always careless with those things. The screen showed several open apps, and there, at the top, I saw notifications from a group chat. Many notifications. From a group named Jessica's Family. My heart started beating faster. I knew I shouldn't look. I knew I was invading their privacy. But something stronger than my sense of propriety made me tap that notification. And in that moment, my life changed forever. The group had hundreds of messages. I scrolled down to the most recent ones, and the first thing I saw froze my blood. It was a message Jessica had sent that very morning. "We are already at the airport. Jason is nervous that the old bag will notice something." I told him to calm down. "She's too dumb to check the card statements." The old bag. She called me the old bag. My hands started to shake. I kept reading. Brenda, Jessica's mother, had replied, "Good thing your mother-in-law is so naive. My daughter knows how to handle these situations. When we get back, we'll already have everything in motion with the lawyer. That house is going to be ours before she even realizes it. Gary, Jessica's father, had sent a thumbs-up emoji. And then he had written, "Jason is a good boy. He knows how to obey. Not like those mother-in-laws who cause trouble. This one is easy to manipulate." I felt as if someone had dumped a bucket of ice water on me. I kept scrolling down the conversation, and every message was worse than the last. Jason had written, "I feel like I'm betraying my mom, but you guys are right. She's already old, and the house is too big for her alone. It's better if it's in our hands before she does something stupid with the property." Jessica had replied, "Babe, it's not betrayal. It's smart planning. Your mom will be better off in a small place where she doesn't have to worry about maintenance. We'll take care of everything. Better off in a small place." They were talking about me as if I were a piece of furniture that needed to be relocated, as if my opinion didn't matter, as if this house, which had been my refuge for 40 years, which my late sister had left me with so much love, was something they could simply take. I kept reading with tears falling down my cheeks. There were messages from days ago planning this trip. It wasn't a weekend at a cabin with friends. It was a week-long trip to Miami. To Miami, with Jessica's entire family. Brenda had written, "I already booked the hotel. 5 stars, oceanfront. We're going to enjoy these days properly. After all, Jessica's mother-in-law is paying for everything without knowing." Gary had replied, "Excellent. I also made reservations at the best restaurants. We're going to live like kings this week. And let the old lady pay the bill," Jason had sent. I used my mom's 3 cards. Between all of them, there's a limit of almost $20,000. That should cover everything. $20,000. They had planned to spend $20,000 of my savings. Money I had scraped together for years, working until my body ached. Money I had saved for my old age, for medical emergencies, so I wouldn't be a burden on anyone. And they were spending it on luxury hotels and expensive restaurants while calling me a dumb old lady. But the worst had not yet arrived. I kept scrolling down the conversation until I found messages from 2 weeks ago. Messages where they discussed their real plan. Brenda had written a long message. "Jessica, I spoke with our lawyer. He says if Jason can get his mother to sign a power of attorney, we can start the process of transferring the property title. It won't be immediate, but we can start preparing the ground. He also says if she shows signs of senility or mental incapacity, the process is faster." Jessica had replied, "My mother-in-law is perfectly lucid. Mom, we can't invent that." Brenda, "We don't have to invent anything, honey. We just have to document forgetfulness, confusion, erratic behaviors. All old people have those moments. We just have to record them on video when they happen and present them as evidence that she can't handle her own affairs." Gary, "Brenda is right. I know 3 cases where it worked perfectly. The family managed to get total control of the elderly person's assets using that method. It's legal if done right." Jason, "I don't know if I feel comfortable with that." Jessica, "Babe, think about our future. Think about the kids we're going to have. We need that house. Your mom is going to be better cared for in a facility anyway. She can't handle all that space anymore. It's for her own good." For my own good? They wanted to lock me up in a facility, steal my house, and convince themselves it was for my own good? I felt a rage so deep I thought I was going to explode. But I kept reading because I needed to know everything. I needed to see how far this betrayal went. And what I found next destroyed me in a way I never imagined possible. There was a message from Jessica from a week ago. "Guys, my mother-in-law asked me if she could come with us to the festival next month. I told her no, that it was a couples-only event. She looked so sad. It almost made me laugh." Brenda had replied, "Well done. Daughter, you have to keep isolating her socially. The fewer connections she has, the easier everything will be." Gary, "Exactly. Old people without a support network are easier to handle." Jason, "Sometimes I feel like I'm too hard on her. Yesterday, she asked if we could have dinner together, and I told her I was busy." Her eyes filled with tears. Jessica, "Jason, don't be soft. It's part of the process. If you start caving now, we're going to lose momentum. Remember what we said. Emotional distance so that when the time for the transition comes, it won't be so hard on you." Emotional distance. They had planned to distance themselves from me deliberately. All those times Jason had avoided my conversations, rejected my invitations to cook together, walked out when I entered the room. It wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't that he was busy. It was a cold and calculated strategy to break my heart little by little, to make me feel invisible in my own house, to prepare me for the day they would kick me out of my own home. The tears were falling so fast I could barely see the screen, but I continued reading because I needed to know it all. I found another message from Brenda that made me feel physically sick. Eleanor is the perfect type of old woman for this. She doesn't have many friends. She doesn't go out much. Her only real family was her sister, and she's dead. Jason is all she has. That gives us a total advantage. Gary. Plus, she's one of those old-school women who do everything for their children. She would never press charges or cause trouble. She's too submissive. Jessica. Exactly. That's why I chose well. A man with a mother like that was perfect for what we needed. I chose well. Jessica had chosen Jason because I was vulnerable, because I was alone, because I had sacrificed so much for my son that they knew I would never confront him. I let myself fall onto Jason's bed with the phone still in my trembling hands. My entire body was shaking uncontrollably. It wasn't just rage I was feeling. It was something much deeper and more painful. It was the sensation of having been completely destroyed by the only people I had trusted, by the son to whom I had given everything. Absolutely everything. I closed my eyes, trying to process what I had just read, but the words kept echoing in my head like blows. Dumb old lady, too submissive, chose well, easy to handle. Every phrase was a knife digging deeper into my chest. I lay there for I don't know how long, maybe minutes, maybe hours. The sun was starting to set when I finally sat up. I had to keep reading. I had to know everything before they came back, before they could erase evidence or change their plans. I needed to know every detail of this betrayal to be able to protect myself. I went back to the phone and searched for older conversations. I found the moment where it all began. 8 months ago, Jessica had started a conversation with her parents. Mom, Dad, I have an idea. My mother-in-law's house is worth at least $400,000, according to the city assessment. It's in a neighborhood that's appreciating a lot. If we can get it in our name, we could sell it in a couple of years and make a lot of money, or keep it and rent out our part while we live there. Brenda had replied immediately. I like how you think, daughter, but it has to be subtle. No obvious pressure. This has to look like a natural transition, Gary had added. I know a lawyer who specializes in these things. Transfers of assets from seniors to family members. He works with cases where the old folks are unable to manage their assets. He can guide us. Jessica. Perfect, Dad. I'm going to start working on Jason. He is the weak link. If I can convince him it's best for his mom, everything will be easier. Working on Jason. My son hadn't been the mastermind of this. He had been the victim of manipulation. But that didn't excuse him. Because he had chosen to go along with it. He had chosen to betray me even knowing it was wrong. I found the conversation where Jessica pitched the idea to Jason. It was 6 months ago. Babe, I need to talk to you about something important. Your mom is getting older, and this house is too much responsibility for her. I've been thinking maybe we should consider helping her move to a smaller, more manageable place. We could keep the house and take better care of it. Jason had replied, I don't know, Jessica. This house means a lot to my mom. My Aunt Catherine left it to her. They were very close. Jessica. Exactly why. Babe, it's too much pain for her. Every corner reminds her of her dead sister. She'd be better off in a new place where she can start from scratch. Besides, think about our future. Think about the babies we want to have. We need space. We need stability. Your mom would understand if you explained it well. And that's how it started. With lies disguised as concern. With manipulation wrapped in sweet words about my well-being. Jason had resisted at first. There were messages where he expressed doubts, where he said he didn't feel right about the idea. But Jessica was persistent, and her parents bombarded him with arguments. Little by little, they wore down his resistance until finally, Jason caved. I watched it happen in those messages. I saw how my son was turned into an accomplice to my destruction, message after message. But there was something else that shattered me completely. I found a conversation where they talked specifically about my sister Catherine. Brenda had written, "The fact that the sister left the house directly to Eleanor and not to Jason is a problem. It means she wanted to protect her from something. We're going to have to be very careful, Gary." Or maybe the sister was simply a dumb old lady too. Didn't think about the legal implications. Jessica. My mother-in-law says her sister made her promise she would never sell the house. That it was so she would always have a safe home. Jason. Yeah, my Aunt Catherine made her swear that on her deathbed. My mom cried for months after she died. Jessica. Well, promises to the dead aren't legal contracts. Once the house is in our name, we can do whatever we want. We can do whatever we want. They were talking about breaking the sacred promise I had made to my dying sister, as if it were nothing. As if Catherine's last wish were a minor inconvenience they could ignore. My sister had worked her whole life to buy this house. She never married, never had children. She left it to me because she knew I had suffered so much after becoming a widow. Because she wanted to make sure I always had a roof over my head. And these people wanted to destroy that gift of love as if it were trash. I kept reading and found the detailed plans. They had divided the process into phases. Phase 1. Isolate me emotionally so I would depend more on Jason. Phase 2. Document any forgetfulness or confusion of mine as evidence of mental incapacity. Phase 3. Convince me to sign a power of attorney under the pretext of helping me with my finances. Phase 4. Use that power to transfer the property title. Phase 5. Convince me to move to a nursing home or small apartment, and if I resisted, they had a plan B. Brenda had described it coldly. If Eleanor refuses to cooperate, we can use the evidence of mental incapacity to initiate a conservatorship process. The lawyer says with good testimonies and documentation, we can get a judge to strip her of the legal capacity to manage her assets. Then, Jason, as the only son, automatically becomes legal guardian and can make decisions for her. Conservatorship. They wanted to declare me mentally incompetent to rob me of everything. Me, who still read 3 books a month. Me, who managed all my bills without a problem. Me, who had never forgotten a doctor's appointment or a commitment. They wanted to invent a dementia that didn't exist to justify their theft. There was more evidence on that phone. Screenshots of properties for sale that Jessica had saved. Luxury houses they planned to buy with the money from the sale of my house. There were messages talking about how they would decorate my home once I wasn't there. Jessica had written, "I'm going to throw out all of Eleanor's old furniture. That dated style makes me nauseous. We're going to do a complete renovation. Modern, minimalist, elegant. Brenda. You can donate her stuff to charity or toss it. Old people accumulate so much junk with no real sentimental value. Gary. The important thing is that you act fast once she's out. Don't give her time to regret it or cause trouble. Jason. She won't cause trouble, trust me. I know my mom. She's very docile. Docile. My son thought I was docile, and maybe he was right. I had been docile all my life. I had accepted the mistreatment, the indifference, the financial abuse, all without complaining, because I believed that was how you loved. I believed that sacrificing yourself in silence was what good mothers did. But while reading those messages, something inside me broke. Or maybe it fixed itself. Maybe for the first time in my life, something snapped into its correct place. I took screenshots of everything. Every conversation, every plan, every insult. My cell phone filled up with evidence, hundreds of images documenting the biggest betrayal I had ever experienced. When I finished, it was almost 10 at night. I had spent hours reading, crying, trembling with rage. I got up from Jason's bed and left his phone exactly where I had found it, plugged into the charger. I walked out of that room and closed the door. I walked to the kitchen like a robot and made myself some tea. My hands were still shaking, so much that I spilled hot water on the counter. But it didn't matter. Nothing mattered except one thing, a truth that had just crystallized in my mind with brutal clarity. I couldn't stay here. I couldn't keep being the docile victim they expected. I couldn't wait for them to execute their plan and leave me with nothing. I had to act first. I had to protect myself. And I had to do it in a way they could never predict. Because if I had learned one thing in those hours reading their conspiracies, it was that they completely underestimated me. They thought I was weak. They thought I was stupid. They thought I would never have the courage to defend myself. And in that, they made their biggest mistake. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room in the dark, staring at the walls of this house that had been my sanctuary for so many years. Every corner held a memory. There, on that sofa, Catherine and I had drunk coffee 1,000 times while she told me about her day. There, at that table, I had helped Jason with his math homework when he was a boy. There, by that window, I had stood countless mornings looking at the garden I had planted with my own hands. This house was more than walls and a roof. It was my history. It was my sister alive in every room. It was the sweat of her labor, the love of her sacrifice. And they wanted to rip it away from me, as if I didn't have a right to my own life. But while the rage grew, something else grew too. A cold and calculating determination I had never felt before. If they could plan in secret, so could I. If they could conspire, so could I. If they could be ruthless, then I would learn to be. Because sometimes, to survive, you have to become something you never thought you would be. Sunday morning, I woke up on the couch, my body aching, but my mind clearer than ever. It hadn't been a dream. Everything I had read was real. My son and his wife were in Miami spending my money while planning to steal my house. And I had a week before they returned. 1 week to change the course of this story. 1 week to stop being the victim and become something they would never expect. I got up, showered, dressed with care. I needed to think clearly. I needed a plan, but first I needed help. I couldn't do this alone. I needed someone I could trust, someone who wouldn't judge me, someone who understood. And there was only one person who met those requirements. Susan, my neighbor of forever, the woman who had been by my side when Catherine died, the only real friend I had left. I grabbed my phone and texted her. Susan, I need to talk to you urgently. Can you come to my house this morning? It's important, she replied in 5 minutes. I'm on my way. Are you okay? I texted back. No, but I'm going to be. When Susan arrived, she found me sitting at the dining room table with my laptop open and all the screenshots organized in folders. She walked in with that look of concern only true friends have. Eleanor, what's wrong? You look terrible. I poured her a coffee and, without saying anything, handed her my phone. Read this, I said with a trembling voice. I want you to read everything before we talk. Susan took the phone and started reading. I watched her expression change with every screenshot. Surprise, disbelief, horror, rage. When she finished, almost half an hour later, she had tears in her eyes. Eleanor, this is monstrous. How can they do this to you? Jason is your son. I nodded while my own tears started falling again. I know. And I need your help. I need to get out of here before they come back. I need to protect myself. But I don't know how. I don't know where to start. Susan got up, walked around the table, and hugged me tight. We're going to fix this. I promise you. But first, we need to think with a cool head. We need a lawyer. We need to document everything. And we need to act fast. We spent all Sunday planning. Susan made calls to contacts she had. A lawyer who was a friend of her brother-in-law, a real estate agent who had helped her sister, an accountant who could review my finances. By Monday morning, I had appointments scheduled with all 3. The first meeting was with the lawyer. His name was Mark, and he had a small but tidy office downtown. I showed him all the screenshots. I explained the entire situation. He listened without interrupting, taking notes occasionally. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and sighed. Mrs. Eleanor, what your family is planning is fraud. It is financial abuse. And potentially, if they were to forge documents or your signature, it would be a felony. You have solid evidence here. You could press criminal charges. But, and here he paused, that would take time, months, maybe years of legal process. And meanwhile, they could continue living in your house, pressuring you, making your life impossible. So, what can I do? I asked desperately. Mark leaned forward. You can protect yourself in a more effective way. You can sell the property. Now, this week, It is your house. It is in your name solely. You don't need anyone's permission. And once sold, there is nothing they can steal. The idea hit me like a lightning bolt. Sell the house. My house. Catherine's gift. The place where I had built so many memories. But what were memories compared to my dignity? What was a house compared to my freedom? My sister had given me this place to protect me, to give me security, and keeping it now would mean losing that security. It would mean staying trapped, waiting for them to strip me of everything. No, I decided in that moment, I wasn't going to let that happen. If I have to sell, I will. If I have to leave, I will leave. But it will be on my terms, not theirs. Mark nodded approvingly. It is the right decision. And I have another recommendation. You need to cancel those credit cards immediately. Report them as lost or stolen. That way the charges they are making now will stop. Furthermore, you should consider filing a report for fraud. Your son used your cards without permission for unauthorized expenses. That is a crime. I felt a knot in my stomach. Report Jason, my son. But then I remembered his words in those messages. My mom is docile. She won't cause trouble. And something in me hardened. Okay. I will file the report. I left Mark's office with a list of actions to follow. First, call the bank and cancel the cards. Second, meet with the real estate agent to start the selling process. Third, start packing my essential things. Fourth, look for a place to move to. Everything had to happen in the next 6 days before Jason and Jessica returned. Susan went with me to the bank. The manager who assisted us was understanding when I explained the situation. Mrs. Eleanor, I see here that your cards have had unusual activity in the last few days. Expenses in Miami totaling. She let out a low whistle. $18,200 so far. Luxury hotels, restaurants, clothing stores. This definitely does not match your usual spending pattern. $18,000 in 3 days. I felt like I was going to faint. And they still had 4 more days of the trip, the manager continued. I'm going to cancel all 3 cards immediately, and we are going to dispute all these charges as unauthorized. I am also going to lock your account so only you can make transactions. You will need to come in person for any major transaction. It's for your security. That afternoon I met with the real estate agent. Her name was Diane, a woman of about 50 with a professional but genuine smile. I need to sell my house fast, I told her directly. Very fast. In less than a week if possible. She blinked, surprised. Mrs. Eleanor, property sales normally take weeks, sometimes months. There are inspections, appraisals, negotiations. I understand you have urgency, but a week is... Then I interrupted her. I am willing to sell below market value, 40% less if necessary. I just need it to close fast and for the money to be in my account before next Wednesday. Diane looked at me with a mix of concern and curiosity. This has to do with family problems, right? I nodded without giving details. She sighed. Okay, let me make some calls. I have investors who buy properties fast with cash. They aren't going to give full price, but they can close in days if the title is clean. That is exactly what I need. By Tuesday afternoon, I already had 3 offers on the table. Diane had worked fast, contacting investors she knew. The best offer was $280,000 in cash. My house was worth at least $400,000 according to the recent assessment, but I didn't care. It wasn't about the money. It was about freedom. It was about ripping out of their hands what they believed was already theirs. I accepted the offer immediately. The buyer was an investor who wanted the property to remodel and flip it. He didn't ask questions. He just wanted to close fast. Diane organized everything for Thursday. Signatures, wire transfer, handing over keys, everything in one day. There were only 2 days left before Jason and Jessica returned. 2 days to dismantle the life I had built here. 2 days to disappear. But I didn't feel sad. I felt powerful. For the first time in years, I was taking control of my own life. Meanwhile, I kept monitoring Jason's old phone. They had no idea I knew everything. They kept sending messages to the family group chat, sharing photos of their luxurious vacation. Jessica posing on the beach in an expensive dress. Jason at a fancy restaurant holding a glass of wine. Brenda and Gary toasting on the balcony of their suite with an ocean view. everyone smiling, everyone happy, everyone spending my money as if it were theirs. Every photo infuriated me more, but also gave me more determination. They had underestimated the dumb old lady, and that was going to be their downfall. In the group, they kept talking about their plans. Jessica had written, "When we get back, we have to start with phase 2. We need Jason to record his mom in moments of confusion, even if it's small stuff. Not remembering where she left her keys, forgetting a date, anything we can use." Brenda replied, "Exactly, and they have to be natural videos, so they don't look staged. We need to build a solid case," Jason wrote. "I still feel bad about this," Jessica answered him quickly. "Babe, we already talked about this. It's for our own good, for our future. Your mom is going to be better taken care of, I promise you." Lies on top of lies. But I wasn't there to be their victim anymore. On Wednesday, I started packing. Not everything, just the essentials. Clothes, important documents, photographs of Catherine, some objects with sentimental value. Susan helped me. We worked in silence most of the time, only interrupted by my occasional tears when I found something that brought back memories. A photo of Jason when he was a baby. A necklace Catherine had given me. The apron my late husband used when he grilled on Sundays. Every object was a piece of my life that I was leaving behind. But I had to do it. There was no other option. Susan hugged me when she saw me crying over a box of photos. "You're going to be okay, Eleanor. This isn't an end. It's a beginning. A better beginning, where no one is going to hurt you." I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. While I packed, I also did other important things. I called the bank and transferred all my money to a new account in another state. An account only I knew about. I canceled all the utilities in my name at this house. Electricity, water, gas, internet, everything. I scheduled the cancellations for Friday morning. I wanted Jason and Jessica to find an empty, dark house with absolutely nothing when they arrived Wednesday night. I also prepared something special. With the help of Mark, the lawyer, I drafted a letter that explained everything. That showed them I knew every detail of their plan. That made it clear they had lost. The letter was harsh, direct, with no room for misunderstandings. It started like this: "Jason and Jessica, when you read this, I will have already disappeared from your lives. The house you planned to steal from me has already been sold. The money you thought you'd inherit is protected in accounts you will never be able to touch. The credit cards you used for your luxury trip without my permission have been reported as fraud. Every charge you made is being disputed, and there is a criminal investigation in process. I know everything. I read every message. I saw every plan. I know every insult you said about me. Dumb old lady. Docile. Easy to handle. You thought I was so weak I would never defend myself. You were wrong." The letter continued for 2 more pages, detailing every betrayal, every lie, every moment where they had shown their true character. And it ended with this: "Jason, I gave you life. I raised you alone after your father died. I worked until my body ached to pay for your college. I opened the doors of my house to you when you got married. And you repaid all that by planning to lock me in a home while stealing the last gift my sister left me. Jessica, I welcomed you into my family with open arms. I never made you feel like less. I never treated you badly. And you called me a useless old woman and conspired to destroy me. I tell you both this. I am not going to press criminal charges, although I could. I am not going to expose you publicly, although I should. I am simply going to do what I should have done a long time ago. Disappear from your lives, because I finally understood that you never loved me. You only loved what you could take from me. Do not try to look for me. Do not try to contact me. For me, you ceased to exist the day you decided to betray me. Have the life you deserve. Eleanor." Mark helped me schedule the delivery of the letter. It would arrive by certified mail exactly on Thursday afternoon, 1 day after I had disappeared, 1 day after they returned. I had another detail to add to the plan. I copied all the screenshots of the conversations and saved them on a USB drive. I left that drive with Mark with specific instructions. If Jason or Jessica try to look for me legally, if they try to cause trouble, If they tell lies about me, you have permission to use this evidence. You can hand it over to the authorities. You can show it to whoever is necessary. I want them to know that although I am not going to attack them, I am not going to let them attack me either. Mark put the drive in his safe. Eleanor, you did everything correctly. You protected yourself legally and emotionally. Now you just need to protect yourself physically. Where are you going to go? I already had the answer. My cousin Linda, not my neighbor, another Linda, lived in another state. We had been close as girls, but lost touch over the years. I had called her 2 days before, explaining my situation vaguely. She didn't ask questions. She just said, "Come, stay as long as you need. My house is your house." Thursday arrived, the day of the signing. Diane picked me up early in the morning. We went to the title company office where the buyer was already waiting. He was a businessman of about 40, polite and efficient. We signed papers for an hour. Every signature was one more step toward my freedom. When we finished, the closing agent handed me a cashier's check for $280,000. I looked at it feeling a mix of relief and sadness. This piece of paper represented 40 years of my life in that house, but it also represented my salvation. I went directly to the bank and deposited the check. The manager processed the transaction immediately. "The funds will be available in 24 hours, she told me. Perfect. By the time Jason and Jessica returned, the money would already be safe in my new account in another state. Out of their reach. Protected. Mine. I went back to the house for the last time that afternoon. The new owners would take possession Friday morning. I had this evening to say goodbye. I walked through every empty room. My steps echoed in the silence. There was no furniture anymore. There were no pictures on the walls anymore. There was nothing left that said Eleanor Vance had lived here for decades. I stood in the center of the empty living room and closed my eyes. I could see Catherine sitting in her favorite armchair, the one I had sold along with everything else. I could hear her laugh when she told me stories about her job. I could feel her hug the day she handed me the keys to this house, telling me, "Sister, this is yours forever. Nobody can ever take it from you." I never thought the one who would try to take it from me would be my own son. I opened my eyes and tears ran freely down my cheeks. "Forgive me, Catherine. I know I promised you I would never sell this house, but staying meant losing it anyway. At least this way, it was me who made the decision. It was me who had control. I hope wherever you are, you can understand. I hope you know I did the only thing I could do to survive." I stood there until it got dark. Then I locked the door for the last time and handed the keys to Diane, who would give them to the new owners in the morning. I never went back into that house. That night I slept at Susan's house, my neighbor. She had insisted I not spend my last night alone. She made a simple dinner, and we sat eating in silence. "Eleanor," she said finally, "I know this hurts. I know you feel like you're losing everything. But I want you to know something. What you are doing is brave. Most people in your situation would stay. They would let themselves be abused because they are afraid of being alone. You chose your dignity. That isn't cowardice. It is the bravest thing I have seen." Her words comforted me, but I still felt that emptiness in my chest, that sensation of having lost my son, because that was what hurt the most. Not the house, not the money. It was knowing that Jason had betrayed me, that the boy I had raised, whom I had loved with every fiber of my being, had turned into a stranger capable of hurting me in the deepest way. "Susan," I asked her with a broken voice, "at what moment did I lose him? At what moment did my son stop loving me?" She sighed and took my hand. "I don't know. Eleanor, maybe he never stopped loving you. Maybe he just stopped prioritizing you. Maybe Jessica changed him. Or maybe, and forgive me for saying this, maybe he was always selfish and you never wanted to see it. Children aren't always who we want them to be. Sometimes they are exactly what we don't want to see." Her words hurt because they tasted like truth. There were signs. Years of signs that I had ignored. Jason had always been a little selfish, a little inconsiderate. But I had justified it. "He's young," I told myself. "He'll mature. He'll learn." But he never matured. He only learned to hide his true nature better, until he met Jessica and found someone who encouraged him to be his worst version. On Friday morning, Susan took me to the bus station. I had decided not to fly. I didn't want to leave easy trails to follow. The bus was slower but more anonymous. My cousin in the other state was waiting for me. The trip would take 2 days with several stops. 2 days to put distance between my previous life and my new reality. While I waited at the station, I received a text from Mark, the lawyer. Eleanor, I just received confirmation. The letter was delivered to your previous address. The new owners received it and kept it for when someone comes asking for you. I also want to inform you that the bank formally processed the dispute of the credit card charges. Jason is going to receive notification of the fraud investigation in the coming days. You did everything correctly. Now go in peace, I replied. Thank you for everything, Mark. I don't know what I would have done without your help, he answered. You protected your future. That is what you did. Take care of yourself. I put the phone away and looked around the station. People coming and going, everyone with their own stories, their own pains, their own battles, and I was one more, a 68-year-old woman starting over, terrifying and liberating at the same time. Susan hugged me tight before I got on the bus. You're going to be okay. I know it. You are stronger than they ever imagined. I hugged her back with all my might. Thank you for everything, for believing me, for helping me, for being the only real friend I had. She had tears in her eyes. Keep me posted. I want to know you arrived safely, that you are safe. I promise. I got on the bus and found my seat by the window. As the vehicle pulled out and the city began to fade away, I thought about Jason and Jessica. At that moment, they were enjoying their last day in Miami, spending the last dollars on my cards before they expired, taking photos to show off on social media, planning how they were going to continue with their scheme when they returned. They had no idea what awaited them. They had no idea that their victim had disappeared, that their plan had collapsed, that the dumb old lady had turned out to be much smarter than they thought. And that gave me a dark but real satisfaction. It wasn't exactly revenge. It was justice. It was self-protection. It was survival. The bus traveled through landscapes I had never seen. Open fields, small towns, mountains in the distance. Every mile moved me further from my old life. Every hour that passed brought me closer to my new reality. I thought a lot during that trip. I thought about all the times I had swallowed my pride, all the times I had accepted mistreatment because I was afraid of being alone, all the times I had prioritized Jason's happiness over mine. And I realized something. It hadn't been love. It had been fear. Fear that if I didn't sacrifice constantly, if I didn't make myself small, if I didn't accept the crumbs of affection they gave me, then I would be completely alone. But now I was alone anyway, and, strangely, it didn't feel as terrible as I had imagined. It felt like breathing after being underwater too long. I reached my destination on Sunday afternoon. My cousin Linda, whom I hadn't seen for almost 15 years, was waiting for me at the station. She recognized me immediately despite the time. Eleanor, she said, hugging me. Welcome. This is your home now. For as long as you need. Her apartment was small but cozy. She showed me the guest room she had prepared for me. It's not much, she apologized, but it's comfortable, and it's yours. I cried when I saw the bed with clean sheets, the towels folded on the dresser, the fresh flowers on the nightstand. I cried because someone had cared enough to make me feel welcome. Someone who didn't really know me, who didn't owe me anything, had done more for me in one day than my own son in years. That night, while I unpacked my few belongings, I received a message from a neighbor from my old house. Eleanor, I don't know if I should be telling you this, but Jason and Jessica arrived an hour ago. It was chaos. They were screaming, crying, calling the police. The new owners showed them the sale papers. Jason tried to force the door and almost got arrested. Jessica was screaming that this was impossible, that you couldn't have done this. Finally, they left. I heard Jason say they were going to look for you. Thought you should know. Thank you, I replied. I am already far away. I am safe. I blocked Jason's number that night. And Jessica's. I didn't want to hear their excuses, their screams, their threats. I didn't need that poison in my new life. The following days were strange. I would wake up in the mornings not knowing where I was for a few seconds. Then reality would return. I was in another city, in another life, far from Jason, far from Jessica, far from everything I had known. My cousin gave me space, but also company. She didn't ask invasive questions. She just let me be. In the mornings we had breakfast together, and she went to work. I spent the days walking around the neighborhood, learning the streets, looking for little places to get coffee, trying to build a new routine, trying to heal. But wounds don't heal fast, especially the ones made by the people you love most. Every night I checked my phone expecting something. I didn't know what. Maybe an apology from Jason. Maybe a message saying he was sorry, that he had made a mistake, that he still loved me. But nothing came. Just silence. And that silence hurt more than any insult. A week after my arrival, Mark called me. "Eleanor, I need to inform you about some developments. Jason tried to file a complaint against you for fraudulent sale of property. He alleged you were mentally incapacitated and the sale should be annulled." My heart stopped. "And what happened?" Mark laughed bitterly. "The judge reviewed the documents. He saw that you passed recent medical evaluations as part of the sale process. He saw that a notary certified your mental capacity. He saw that you acted with a lawyer present. And then he saw the evidence I presented of the conversations where they planned to declare you incompetent falsely. The case was dismissed in minutes. Furthermore, the judge warned Jason that filing false reports could result in charges against him. I felt a relief so huge I almost fainted. So they can't do anything. They can't touch the money. They can't reverse the sale. They can't force me to go back." "Exactly," Mark confirmed. "Legally, you are completely protected. Besides, the bank confirmed the fraudulent charges on the cards. Jason will have to pay everything back or face criminal charges. And Jessica is also implicated because she made some of the charges directly. They are in serious financial trouble now." After hanging up with Mark, I sat on the small balcony of my cousin's apartment. I looked at the city I was barely starting to know. A city where nobody knew my story, where nobody saw me as the dumb old lady who had been tricked by her family. Here I was, just Eleanor, a woman starting over, and that felt like a gift. The days turned into weeks. I found a small apartment to rent. I didn't want to abuse my cousin's hospitality. It was a modest place, a single bedroom in a quiet building. But it was mine. No one had keys except me. No one could enter without my permission. No one could conspire against me inside these walls. I bought simple furniture, nothing fancy, just the necessities, a comfortable bed, a small table, an armchair for reading. I decorated with the few photographs I had brought, Catherine smiling at me from a frame on the nightstand, my late husband in another frame in the living room. Jason wasn't in any visible photograph. I had brought some of him as a child, but I kept them in a box in the closet. I couldn't look at them without crying, without wondering where I had lost that sweet boy. 1 month after my arrival, I received an email from Jason. I had changed my phone number, but he still had my email address. The message was long, erratic, full of rage and desperation. "Mom," it started, although it didn't feel like it came from a son. It sounded like a furious stranger. "How could you do this to us? How could you sell the house without telling us? That house was my inheritance. It was my future. Jessica and I had planned everything. We were going to have kids there. We were going to build our life there. And you ruined everything. The bank is suing us for the cards. They say we committed fraud, that we have to pay back $18,000 plus interest and penalties. We don't have that money. I lost my job because I couldn't focus with all this stress. Jessica left me. She said I was a loser who couldn't even handle his own mother. She went back to her parents and they blame me for everything. I'm living in a horrible apartment. I can barely pay rent. And it's all your fault. If you had been reasonable, if you had understood that we only wanted the best for you. But no, you had to be selfish. You had to think only about yourself. After everything I did for you, after I put up with you all these years, I read the email 3 times. Every word was a knife, but not of pain, of clarity, because in that message I saw everything I needed to see. Jason wasn't sorry. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He didn't recognize his betrayal. He was only angry because his plan had failed. He only blamed me for protecting myself. He said he had put up with me all these years, as if having me as a mother had been a burden, as if raising your child, loving him, sacrificing for him, was something for which he should receive gratitude. His thinking was so twisted it was scary. I replied to the email. It was the only time I did. My reply was short. Jason, I read your message. And the only thing I see is that you still don't understand what you did. You didn't sell me your plan as something for my good. You conspired behind my back. You didn't ask me for the house. You planned to steal it from me. You didn't use my cards with permission. You committed fraud. And now that you face the consequences of your actions, you blame me. That tells me everything I need to know. There is nothing more to talk about between us. Do not contact me again. Eleanor. After sending that message, I blocked his email too. I closed that door completely. The following weeks were easier, without the constant anxiety of expecting messages from Jason, without the weight of wondering if I should give him another chance, without the guilt he tried to impose on me for protecting myself. I started going out more. I met other women in a reading group at the local library, women my age who had also lived through losses, betrayals, new beginnings. I didn't tell them my full story at first, but little by little I shared pieces. And I found something surprising. I wasn't the only one. Almost all of them had stories of family members who had used them, hurt them, betrayed them, and all of them had to make difficult decisions to protect themselves. One of them, a lady named Nancy, told me something I will never forget. Eleanor, society teaches us that mothers must sacrifice always, that we must endure everything because it is our duty. But nobody teaches us that we also have a right to dignity, to respect, to say enough. What you did wasn't abandoning your son. It was saving yourself. And that isn't selfishness. It is survival. I found a part-time job at a craft store. I didn't really need the money, but I needed purpose. I needed to feel useful. The owner was a kind woman who taught me how to make some pieces. I discovered I had a talent for crafts. I started making small projects, knitting, embroidery, decorations, things we sold in the store, and every piece I completed felt like a small victory, like proof that I could still create, I could still contribute. I still had value. Months passed. Autumn arrived with its golden colors. I had planted some flowers in pots on my small balcony. I took care of them every morning. I watched them grow. And in those flowers, I saw my own transformation. I was also growing. I was also blooming. Even though I had started in arid and rocky soil, I received one last piece of news from Mark before closing that chapter completely. Eleanor, thought you'd want to know. Jason and Jessica reached an agreement with the bank. They are going to pay the $18,000 in installments over 5 years. If they miss a single payment, they face criminal charges. I also learned that Jason is working 2 jobs to be able to pay, and Jessica went back to him. But apparently, the relationship is very deteriorated. Her family despises him for not being able to get the house. Ironic, right? What they wanted united them. What they lost is destroying them. Ironic was an understatement. It was poetic justice. They had conspired together. They had leaned on each other in their evil plan. They had laughed at me while spending my money. And now, that very destroyed plan was what kept them tied in a toxic relationship. Jason trapped working like a slave to pay a debt that never should have existed. Jessica trapped with a man her family despised. Brenda and Gary, watching their grand scheme not only fail, but leave their daughter in a worse situation. I didn't feel pity for any of them. Maybe that made me cruel. Maybe I should have felt some compassion. After all, Jason was still my son biologically. But the son I had raised, the boy I had loved, that one didn't exist anymore. If he ever existed, maybe it had just been an illusion I had created. A fantasy of perfect motherhood that was never real. And accepting that hurt, but it also liberated. Because it meant I hadn't lost anything real. I had only let go of something I never had. Winter arrived in my new city. It was colder than the climate I was used to. I bought thick coats and learned to enjoy the cold. There was something purifying about it, as if every gust of freezing wind took away another piece of the pain. I joined more activities, a walking group for seniors, a painting class at the community center. I even started taking computer classes because I wanted to learn to use technology better. I wanted to be independent in all aspects. I didn't want to depend on anyone ever again. In the painting class, I met a gentleman named Arthur. He was a widower, a few years older than me, with a gentle smile and sad eyes that understood loss. We weren't flirting exactly. We were two broken people learning to exist again. But there was a comfort in his presence, a silent understanding. One day, after class, he invited me for coffee. I accepted. We sat in a small coffee shop and talked for hours. He told me about his wife who had passed away from cancer 3 years ago, about his children who lived in other countries and rarely called him, about the loneliness of aging when the people you thought would be there simply aren't. I told him my story. For the first time, my whole story, from the beginning to the end. Jason, Jessica, the plan, the betrayal, my escape. Arthur listened without interrupting. When I finished, I saw tears in his eyes. "Eleanor," he said, taking my hand across the table, "what you did was the bravest thing I have heard, and I am very sorry your son failed you in that way. But I want you to know something. The fact that he betrayed you doesn't mean you failed as a mother. It means he failed as a son." Those words broke something inside me. I cried there in that coffee shop. I cried for everything I had lost, for everything I had endured, for all the years I had believed I wasn't enough. Arthur didn't try to stop my tears. He just held my hand and waited. And when I finally calmed down, he smiled gently. "Now," he said, "let's talk about your future, not your past, about the good things that can still come." And we talked. For the first time in months, I talked about hopes instead of pain, about possibilities instead of losses, about the life I still had left to live. Arthur and I became close friends. There was no romance, not really, but there was companionship. We walked together on Sundays. We went to the movies occasionally. We cooked simple dinners at my apartment or his, and slowly, I realized I was building something I never truly had, a life of my own. Not defined by being someone's mother, not defined by being someone's wife, just Eleanor, a woman with her own interests, her own friendships, her own choices. And that felt revolutionary. After 68 years, I was finally discovering who I was when nobody needed me for something. A year after my escape, I received a physical letter, not from Jason, from Brenda, Jessica's mother. That surprised me. The letter was brief but impactful. "Mrs. Eleanor, I don't know if you will read this or if you hate me too much to consider my words, but I need to tell you something. My daughter Jessica left Jason 3 months ago. She realized he wasn't the man she thought. Or maybe she realized the plan we mapped out was immoral and cruel. I don't know. What I know is that since all this blew up, my family hasn't had peace. Gary and I fight constantly. He blames me for pushing the plan. I blame him for encouraging it. Jessica is depressed, in therapy, trying to understand what kind of person she became. And I can't sleep at night." The letter continued. "I keep seeing your face in my mind, the way you must have felt reading those conversations, discovering that your daughter-in-law's family, people who should have respected you, called you a dumb old lady, that we conspired to steal your home. I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that we didn't come out of this unscathed, that the cruelty we exercised against you is destroying us from the inside, and that if I could turn back time, I would have never suggested that horrible plan. But I can't. I can only live with the guilt. And I hope that you, wherever you are, have found peace. Because you deserve it. We don't." She signed simply, "Brenda." I read the letter several times. I felt many things. Anger because the apology came too late. Satisfaction because they were suffering consequences. Sadness because all this could have been avoided if they had just chosen to be good people. But mainly I felt indifference. Her guilt wasn't my problem. Her destroyed family wasn't my responsibility to fix. I had healed enough not to need her regret. I didn't need her validation that what they did to me was wrong. I already knew, and I had already moved on. I didn't reply to the letter. I put it in a drawer with all the other evidence from that time. Documents I kept for legal reasons, but no longer looked at. That chapter was closed. My life now was different. Better. Smaller, in material terms, perhaps. I didn't have a big house anymore. I didn't have close family anymore. But I had peace. I had dignity. I had choice, and that was worth more than any property. more than any forced relationship with people who didn't value me. Seasons kept changing. Spring arrived with its flowers and new beginnings. I was blooming too. My small craft business had grown. Now I sold my pieces at local fairs. In addition to the store, I knew my neighbors. I had routines. I had purpose. One afternoon, while organizing my things, I found an old photo of Jason when he was 5 years old. He was smiling, hugging a teddy bear, his eyes full of innocence. I looked at that photo for a long time, and finally, I could separate the child from the man. I could cry for the child I loved without feeling obligated to the man who betrayed me. I could honor the good memories without letting them tie me to a toxic relationship. And that, I understood, was real healing. Arthur visited me that night. We had planned to have dinner together. While we cooked, I told him about the photo, about how I could finally look at it without feeling that sharp pain in my chest. He smiled while chopping vegetables. "Eleanor, that means you are truly healing. It isn't forgetting. It is learning to remember without bleeding." He was right. The memories didn't bleed me dry anymore. I didn't wake up at night with panic attacks anymore. I didn't compulsively check my phone, expecting messages that would never arrive anymore. I didn't blame myself for not seeing the signs sooner anymore. I had reached a place of acceptance. Things happened. They were terrible, but I survived. And not only did I survive, I was thriving in my own way. After dinner, Arthur and I sat on the balcony watching the stars. The spring air was soft and scented. "Eleanor," he said softly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you ever think about contacting Jason? Giving him a chance to apologize properly?" I considered the question honestly. I used to think about it, the first few months. Every day, but not anymore. Because I realized something. He knows where I am, if he really wanted to find me. Mark has my information. He could contact me through him. But he hasn't done it. And that tells me he still doesn't understand what he did wrong. He still believes I overreacted. That I was cruel. Until he can see his own fault, there is no conversation possible. Arthur nodded understandingly. "You are wise. Eleanor, many people in your situation would have let themselves be manipulated again. They would have fallen for the guilt and gone back. You chose your peace. That isn't selfishness, it is self-love. And self-love is something that took me 68 years to learn. We stayed in silence, enjoying the night. And in that silence, I found something I never had in my old life. Real tranquility. Not the superficial calm of pretending everything was okay, but the deep peace of knowing I was exactly where I needed to be. 2 full years have passed since that night I read the messages on Jason's phone. 2 years since my life exploded and I had to rebuild it from scratch. And now, sitting in this small apartment that is completely mine, I can say with honesty that I wouldn't change anything. Yes, I lost my house, but I gained my freedom. Yes, I lost my son, but I found myself, and that trade, as painful as it was worth every tear. My routine now is simple but satisfying. I wake up early and drink coffee on the balcony while watching the sunrise. I work on my crafts in the mornings. In the afternoons, I walk through the park or visit the library. Weekends, I spend time with Arthur and with the friends I have made in my classes. They are small pleasures, nothing extraordinary. But they are mine. No one can take them from me. No one conspires to steal this life because I didn't build anything others can covet. I built peace, and that cannot be transferred, cannot be sold, cannot be stolen. I have learned so much in these 2 years. I learned that family isn't always blood, that the people who owe you loyalty the most are sometimes the first to betray you, that constant sacrifice doesn't generate gratitude, but expectations. That saying no is an act of self-love, not cruelty. That being alone is not the same as being abandoned. And that starting over at any age is possible if you have the courage to take the first step. The first step is always the hardest, but every step after becomes a little easier. Occasionally, I receive news of my old life through acquaintances. I learned that Jason finally finished paying the credit card debt after almost 2 years of constant work. I learned that Jessica tried to go back to him briefly, but finally left him for good. I learned that Brenda and Gary got divorced due to the stress and mutual blame. I learned that Jason now lives alone in a very modest apartment, working a job that barely makes ends meet. And although a part of me, that maternal part that never dies completely, feels a twinge of sadness for him, the greater part of me feels only indifference. He made his choices. I made mine. He chose betrayal and greed. I chose dignity and survival. We both live now with the consequences of those choices. There is nothing more to discuss. Sometimes I wonder if Jason thinks of me, if he regrets it, if he finally understands the magnitude of what he did. But those questions no longer keep me up at night, because the truth is, it doesn't matter. His regret or lack thereof doesn't change my reality. It doesn't return the years of mistreatment. It doesn't erase the insults he wrote about me. It doesn't undo the plan he hatched to rob me. And it definitely doesn't rebuild the trust he destroyed. I have decorated my apartment with things that bring me joy. Plants in every window, paintings. I painted myself in art class. Photographs of Catherine smiling. A blanket knitted by Nancy, my friend from the reading group. Books stacked next to my favorite armchair. It is a small space, but it is full of love. Self-love. Love from the real friendships I have cultivated. And that is enough. More than enough. It is abundance after years of emotional scarcity. The other day, while organizing my closet, I found the box with the photos of Jason as a boy. I took them out and looked at them one by one. I didn't cry anymore. I only felt a soft melancholy for that time that no longer exists. For that child who grew up and became someone I don't recognize. But I also felt gratitude, because that experience, as devastating as it was, taught me the most important lesson of my life. It taught me that I matter, that my well-being matters, that my dignity is non-negotiable, and that never, never again will I allow someone to treat me as if I were disposable. Arthur proposed a few months ago that we move in together. Not as a romantic couple necessarily, although there is deep affection between us, but as life partners, two people who have been hurt and choose to heal together. I am considering it, not because I need it, but because I want it. And that difference is fundamental. Before, I needed Jason. I needed his approval, his presence, his affection. And that need made me vulnerable to his abuse. Now I am complete on my own. If I choose to share my life with Arthur, it will be from a place of wholeness, not lack. And that makes all the difference in the world. A few days ago, I received an unexpected email. It was from a young woman who had heard my story through Nancy. She wrote, "Mrs. Eleanor, I don't know you personally, but my friend told me your story. I want you to know that you inspired me to leave an abusive relationship with my family. I had been the ATM for my brothers and parents for years. I felt guilty about setting boundaries, but your story showed me that protecting myself isn't betraying them. It's saving myself. Thank you for your bravery. It made me cry for the right reasons. Because my pain had served a purpose. It had helped another person find their own strength. And that gave meaning to everything that had happened. This morning, while drinking my coffee on the balcony, I thought about the entire road traveled. From that terrible night reading the betrayals on Jason's phone to this moment of peace, it wasn't easy. There were nights where I thought I wouldn't survive the pain. There were moments where I doubted my decisions, where I wondered if I had been too hard, if I should have given them another chance. But every time those thoughts arrived, I remembered their exact words. Dumb old lady? Easy to handle. Too submissive. And I remembered that I hadn't misunderstood anything. I hadn't exaggerated anything. They really conspired to destroy me. And I really chose to survive. If I could talk to the Eleanor of 2 years ago, to that woman trembling while reading those horrible messages, I would tell her this. I know you are scared. I know you feel like you are losing everything. But what you are losing isn't worth keeping. What comes after the pain is better than you can imagine. You are going to discover a strength you didn't know you had. You are going to find people who truly value you. You are going to build a small but beautiful life. And you are going to be okay. More than okay. You are going to be at peace. And to anyone reading this, to anyone who identifies with my story, I want to tell you the same thing. If you are being abused by your family, if they are using you, if you are being treated as if you didn't matter, I want you to know that you do have options, that you are not trapped, that choosing your dignity over toxic family doesn't make you bad people. It makes you survivors. It makes you brave. And although the path will be difficult, although there will be pain and loss, on the other side, there is life. There is peace. There is the possibility of finally being who you really are without having to shrink yourself to make people happy who are never going to value you. Don't stay waiting for things to get better on their own. Don't stay believing that if you sacrifice a little more, you will finally receive the love you deserve. Because people who truly love you don't demand that you destroy yourself to prove your loyalty. Real love doesn't hurt constantly. It doesn't manipulate. It doesn't conspire. It doesn't betray. And you deserve real love. Even if that love comes from friends instead of family. Even if it comes from yourself first. Today is a beautiful day. The sun is shining, and there is a gentle breeze. I am going out for a walk with Arthur. Then we have the craft fair, where I am going to sell my pieces. Tonight we will have dinner with Nancy and other friends. It is a simple, quiet life, without drama, without betrayals, without conspiracies. And it is the most beautiful life I have lived, because it is mine, completely mine. No one can take it from me, because it isn't based on material possessions that can be stolen. It is based on inner peace that I earned after the storm. Jason never found me. He never really tried to apologize through the channels he had available. And that tells me everything I need to know. He lost his mother the day he decided to betray her. I lost my son the day I discovered who he really was. And we both keep living, but only one of us is at peace. Only one chose dignity over greed. Only one is truly free. And that person is me, Eleanor Vance, 68 years old, survivor, free. And finally, after a lifetime of sacrifice for others, living for myself, and I don't regret a thing.